Hey everybody, Dave Presida here, and I am excited to say that this is the last episode of season 3. This is number 12. We call it the best of commercial construction, elevate the industry. You know, we've done over 40 episodes in this podcast to date, and it's been a combination of interviews with industry leaders, people who have made a difference, as well as commentary by me, sharing my experiences in the business, all with the single purpose of helping you, everyone from owner to intern, understand the business and make the best decision about where you want to go and how you want to get there. You know, we've taken what we think embody the message that we want. We've taken clips from these interviews in my solo efforts, and we've put them together in a way that we hope entertains you and gets you actually to go back and maybe listen to some of these again. So without further ado, let's get on to our first clip. So the first one is with Charbel Tager, who's the president and co-founder of Specified Technologies, Inc., STI. They're a leading manufacturer of fire stop products and systems throughout the world. The really cool thing about Charbel is how he got to where he is today. When I interviewed him, the clip that you're going to hear starts when he was in Egypt and he was a kid. You won't believe what happened to his family. And it shaped him, it changed him, and it kind of, a plan coalesced within him then that he used to get to where he is today. And I'll let you figure it out. Take a listen. We're going to get to STI and what makes you different, but let's talk about your background as a person. You were born in Egypt.
I was born in Cairo, Egypt, where my parents of Lebanese origin lived and built a business. That business was nationalized in 1961. Meaning that the Egyptian government, which was under significant Russian influence in these days, Russia was still a communist country, they took the factories away. And then a year later, we were sequestered, which means they took everything away. Now your clothes, your furniture, your home, your car, your money in the bank, everything now belongs to the state and you're a ward of the state. And a few years later, they kicked us out and said, okay, now go back to your country. So I
hope the audience understands what you just said, because your parents' life was turned upside down.
Totally. It was very hard for them.
One day they have a business, the next day the government owns it.
Yeah.
And they had no say.
Yes, no say. And luckily, the one thing they had was a very, very deep faith. And that helped them a lot. And truly, I could see the hand of God in a lot of moments in our family's history.
How old were you then?
I was 13 when, I was in 61. I was 9.
But you remember?
I faintly remember all this. I remember going from one apartment to another because we didn't have our own apartment anymore. So we would be staying with different families every few months. It was very hard, very, very hard on
Lessons learned as a child to see that your parents, because my father went through many things that impacted me. Lessons learned by you about the way your parents handled that.
Yes.
What were they?
So the first lesson, once I understood, is I was very grateful for how my parents protected me from all this. And I had a normal childhood. It was not a luxurious one the way it would have been, but in many ways, it turned out to be to my advantage. I probably would have been a very spoiled kid. That's for one.
Interesting.
For two, it made me think through a lot of things and realize how courageous my parents were, but also that I needed to build on the rock. And so when I was somewhere, maybe 16, 17, I decided that I had to come to America. I have to find a way to come to America, make my way here, and then basically make my life here. And so I developed a game plan, and my game plan was to get my bachelor's from the American University of Beirut, then find a way to get an MBA here. And then I wanted to, at some point, do my own business, but I knew I had a lot to learn. So I thought consulting would be a good place to be for a few years. You learn a lot about companies, how they operate, the mindset of the CEO and the executive suite. You learn about how to analyze, how to look at different things. And then after that, I would run something. And then after that, I would do my own. And that is basically what I did.
So you had a plan.
I had a plan.
And you had no idea fire stop didn't mean anything to you at the time. It could have been anything.
No idea exactly how that plan would develop, where it would be, other than it would be in America. And along the way, many times I got offered, both at McKinsey and at TNB, to go back to Europe. And I talked to my wife about it, and she said, well, what your plan is to stay in America. How does that fit? And I said, it doesn't. So she said, well, then don't do it.
There you go.
There we go.
So we always talk about the why. And the why for you, the thing that got you through, and you developed a plan. You didn't know where you're going to end up.
No.
Not that you've ended anywhere, because you haven't, but you wanted to own a business. You wanted to have a meaningful career. So you set yourself up in consulting and manufacturing, and to prepare you for what you didn't know you were going to get into.
Exactly.
So that brings you to Jim Stahl's success. So your influence on others is a big part of how you measure what you do every day.
No question.
That's cool. We're going to end it with this. Describe in an article that I found, it might have been 2 years ago, it's called A Company with a Soul. Describe that.
Well, I've given you part of it already.
Yes, you have.
I think a lot of companies are out there just to make money. Obviously, we want to make money because we need to make money to be able to do all this. But money in itself is not our goal. Money, the way we look at it, is the result of a job well done. So we're a company with a soul, in the sense that first and foremost, we want to take care of the people who work for us, because if we take good care of them, they will take good care of our customers. That's for one. For two, we realize that every human being has, whether they're our customers, whether they're our vendors, whether they are our colleagues, there's a lot more to them than just business. There's a whole spiritual side to a person. And you can define this any way you want. It's emotional, it's a way of thinking, it's an attitude, it's beliefs, but it's not a number. It's not, oh, this guy is worth so much to me every month. It's not, I pay this guy so much, and so he's worth less than this other guy that I pay more. Or,
sure.
Okay. So I think that when you deal with people like this, through the range of contacts you have, you come across as somebody who cares, as a company that cares, and we are a company that cares. And so this whole thing about a company with a soul, we're not the ones who invented this. It's our customers who told us, you are a company with a soul. And then we stopped and said, wow, this is deep. And we asked them, why? And they told us what I told you.
That's the ultimate compliment, isn't it?
And it's quite a compliment. And truly, it's exactly what Jim and I wanted to achieve. And so you asked about success. Okay, this is one of the aspects of success.
Wow. What a story. What a guy. To the point where he said after the interview, after he listened to this interview, he said his favorite part wasn't talking about himself and his quote unquote success story. It was the part where I asked him to give advice to different sets of people. If you missed that, you should go back and listen to it, because it was phenomenal. Charbel had a plan. His plan was to go to America, get a degree, become a consultant so he could look at different businesses. That's what he did. And he describes that in this interview. Firestop itself was never his passion. It is today, and it's important, and we're safer for it. But he was ready, he was prepared, and he seized the opportunity. Congrats, Charbel. The next interview clip is with Vic Verma, the founder of Alpha Insulation and Waterproofing. And before he sold his business a few years ago, yes, for 9 figures, and I can say that because it's public information, he owned the largest insulation and related products contracting company in the country, the biggest. Okay, and some would say the very best. Now, Vic has a compelling story, much different than the one we've heard about Charbel. So take a listen.
Of a multi-family construction company. So this was more to make sure that their line of dialogue is open with my brother, that I got this go-first job to get in the business. Well, they hired me for Alamo Heating and Air Conditioning. But luck would have it, the day I joined the company, the manager quit from the insulation side. Since I didn't know anything about either insulation or heating and air conditioning, they offered me to come and start in the insulation side. And a couple of months it took me to figure out that this company is new, insulation side, and they have not made any money. If I can figure it out to make some money, I can make my future better. That's how by mistake I got in the insulation business.
You're an engineer by trade, right?
Yes, I am, but not a civil engineer. And that's another funny thing. In India, when you're growing up, there are only 2 professions parents want their children to have, either doctor or an engineer. I would pass out if I look at blood. So there was a doctor, being a doctor was out. So and I became an engineer to pacify my mom. But marketing, entrepreneurship was always in me. And once I went to Bombay, where I started working, I acquired 2 more degrees, one in international marketing and marketing management, which really helped me in transition into entrepreneurship.
So you had an entrepreneurial spirit. You stumbled and you called yourself a gopher, right? You stumbled into a job. What did management see in you? I mean, yeah, the manager was let go, he left, and you were there. But what did management see in you at such a young age that they put that kind of responsibility on your shoulders?
It's taking ownership of the task. I never blamed it on anybody. All the way from learning to estimate, to selling, to making sure the job gets done, to make sure the accounting gets the billing, and even to follow up with the customer to get paid. I took ownership of all these tasks. And these are tasks any entrepreneur should have to succeed. I didn't consider myself to be an entrepreneur. I was an employee of a company, but I took ownership of everything which was given to me. And that's probably what the management liked.
And that is critical because, as I say, in a podcast that was released on January 7th, questions and answers, concerns about commercial construction. One of the questions I was asked was, how do I move forward in the business? And my answer was, and for you that are listening, it's critical. Be good at what you do. Even if you don't have a master plan, I don't think you started out by saying, I'm going to own, and I'll give you a secret here, the biggest specialty insulation and related products firm in the country. You didn't start out that way. You started out by being good at what you did, and you added value, and one thing led to another. What did that lead to? You being good with that original company. How did you start your own business? How did that happen?
Like I said, my promotions in that company at Alamo were very, very quick. From gopher to a manager the first year, general manager the second year, president the third year, fourth year open another office in Corpus Christi, I traveled every week. Our company had a plane, so I went to Corpus every week and managed both the offices. We had a disagreement with our chairman, and instead of giving you any details, I decided not to be part of that organization, and I was going to go and look for a job. Didn't want to do. Didn't even know that I want to be in my own business. A friend of mine who was an ex-accountant of the company I worked for called me and said, get in the business yourself. And I told him, I really don't know business. He said, what is your fear? I said, I don't understand accounting, the ledgers, like, credits and debits. And he said, but that's 5% of the work. You know how to estimate, you know how to sell, you get the job done, you bill the customer, you follow up and collect the money. That's 95% of the business. I'll help you in the other 5%. So the fear of the unknown, which I thought accounting was more than 50% of what a business is, turned out to be a very small amount. And over the years, I learned.
It's a good thing that you got that advice from that person, because think about it. You have a thriving business, you've impacted many, many lives. And if you would have been inhibited by some debits and credits, you might not have ever got there. You can hire people to do accounting. You can hire people to do what you don't do, right? But you can't teach people what you know, and you talked about it earlier. You use the word ownership. And I think that that's something that you had and something that you still have today, because people can say what they want, but they own what they do, and you're a good example of that. So Vic Verma, a self-proclaimed gopher, to where he is today. Now, he didn't make excuses. He saw obstacles as opportunities, and he made the most of what the construction business in America could offer. And you know how he did it? By doing everything that was asked of him well. He took it seriously, whether he was a gopher, whether he was driving a truck, it didn't matter. Vic had that and had those habits. He didn't have a plan. He didn't need one. He saw opportunity because he was ready for it. So one thing in common that Charbel and Vic had is they had to start a business. Now, you ask them and you listen to them, and they'll both say that they had no clue that they were going to be successful business owners. Now, they did have one thing in common, and that is the why. And I talk about that in starting a business and the basic do's and don'ts, things you should do. It's chock full of information for people who are thinking about or just starting a business. Have a look. The biggest single question you will be faced with, and this will never change, is why you're doing what you're doing. Why do you want to start a new business? And there's a ton of reasons. Maybe it's to build wealth. You want a path to a better lifestyle, time and money, be your own boss. You want to control your future. You needed a challenge. You don't like who you're working for. You say, man, this guy's doing it. I can do what he's doing. A million different things. For me, when I started my business back in '84, well, a couple of those things hit true. I knew I could do what my boss was doing, and I did. But it wasn't about just money, because I don't think money is enough of a motivator for people. At least it wasn't for me. Maybe it is for other people. But for me, it was a combination of time and money. And that's just a personal thing. But that is a huge, huge question that you've got to answer. You got to know beyond a shadow of a doubt why you're willing to work hard and risk more. Okay, because the why has to be stronger than the pain it's going to take to get there. I'll give you a little bit of my story. Between 92 and 95, I went to hell and back, right? And I had to restructure businesses, and I lost partners, and things didn't go well. I went from owning 3 homes to renting a small home. I went from a Mercedes 560 SEC to a 10-year-old SUV. This happened in a period of a year. And it didn't matter because my wife was 100% behind me. I had 4 little kids at the time. They didn't care if they lived in a big house or a small house. They didn't know. So, as a matter of fact, one more thing happened. I remember it was an interesting scenario. I went to an ATM machine and I wanted to get like $40 out of it. So I put the card in the machine. It ate the card. It said insufficient funds. And somebody said, man, that was the low point, wasn't it? I said, no, that wasn't the low point. The low point was when I realized that I had issues and I had to take care of them. And I did. Okay, some partners just walked away, others stayed with me. You know, you find out a lot about people when you're going through tough times. But the passion I had about why I was doing what I did got me through it. And once I realized I was on the path forward again, second time was a lot easier, then, that's when then I could say I was happy. So your why is huge. Know why you're doing this. Incredible. Financing is the lifeblood of your business and is super important part of it. Now we're going to dive really, really deep into financing in a future episode. But in general, you're going to be able to get money from lenders. Could be a bank, could be private, private person. It could be a friend. But I'm gonna warn you. When you get to people, right? A lot of people start businesses and they want to bring somebody on because they have money. And that's okay if that's the only way you can do it. But when you talk about people in general, you want to bring people into your business who can add value that you can't. You don't need a duplicate of you. You need somebody who does what you don't do. For example, I brought a field guy on. Look, I had never installed anything in the field in my life, but man, I could sell it, right? I needed somebody who got their hands dirty, who went from job to job, and who made things happen. That was a value added to me. But if you're going to bring people in your business, don't do it to get financing. And here's why. If that person, 2 or 3 years down the road, that person is a 50-50 partner with you and all they did was bring in money that you now can get easily, right? You can get it because now you have equity and you can borrow it. Well, to get that person out, they own half of that business. And the only reason you brought them in is because you wanted the comfort level of them bringing in some cash. Again, if it's the only way to do it, half of something is better than all of nothing. But don't bring on a partner for money, okay? You bring on a partner if they're strategically built to add value to your business. Now, so yes, I could have done things a lot differently. If I had a podcast like this that offered the ABCs of what to do and what not to do, I probably would have done things differently. So if you're starting a new business or thinking about it, listen to the podcast. It'll help you. Our next clip is from an episode I did in season 1 on business development. We call it BD. And you would ask me then, I would have said it's sales, and sales is partially right. But really, there's 4 baskets that I consider business development, because you're talking about developing your business from the inside out, right? Sales is part of what you got to meet the needs of ownership and the industry as the industry changes. So I've been very fortunate. I've started, built, and sold businesses. I've worked for big public companies, big private companies. I've personally sold over $1 billion worth of contract work, and that's a billion with a B. So I have some good information that I share with you in this episode. Here are just a couple. In my career, I've personally sold over $1 billion with a B dollars worth of construction contracts. So I've seen a lot of different people, a lot of ways to do it. We're going to share some of that with you too. So whether you're an owner, in operations, sales, marketing, administration, IT, doesn't matter. Business development impacts you and you impact business development. So what is business development? It's defined by Investopia as any idea, initiative, or activity aimed toward making a business better. Now that is really general. If you would have asked me 25 years ago what is business development, I would have said sales, maybe sales and marketing. And I wouldn't be wrong, but I only have to capture a piece of that. Because business development, the way I would define it today, is developing your business from the outside, which sales and marketing and getting jobs, getting revenue. That's a big piece, because without that, nothing else happens. But there's a lot more than that. Business development also includes developing your business internally to support those sales. And we're going to get into those aspects of business development. And I think we can all agree that today, if a business is not moving forward, it's fallen behind. So business development, I feel, is divided into 4 initiatives, into 4 baskets. Number 1 would be strategic planning, developing a master plan and analyzing results. Number 2, revenue generation. You need sales. Number 3, field execution. When you get the sales, you've got to execute the work. And then you need administrative support, which is number 4. That's payroll, accounts payable, IT, HR, and so on. You know, if you look at the 4 baskets, it's almost like 4 tires on a car. If they're not in sync and they're not aligned, you're going to make it down the highway, but it's going to be a bumpy ride. Now, if one of those 4 key areas is flat and you got a flat tire, you're not going anywhere. So there are 10 basic parts within these 4 baskets. And I don't have time to go through all those in today's episode. But in future episodes, we're going to drill down and each one will have its own. So we're going to really dig deep. But let's get in today to what a good business development plan looks like. So let's start with the master plan. Number 1, it's the most underrated step in the BD process. In my episode number 4, starting a business, I asked the most important question, and it is why? Why are you doing it? You know, the same holds true for companies of all ages and sizes. The question is, where do you want to go? Begin with the end in mind. That was a quote by author Stephen Covey. He wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And if you haven't read Stephen Covey, you should. What it's saying is you should start all your activities knowing where you want it to lead you. Sounds basic, but some companies base their success on one thing. Did we make money? Now, making money is, I guess, why you're in business. There's a lot of good other things that we should be counting too. How about this? If you made money, great. Did you ask yourself if you gained a market share? Did you develop strategic partnerships, improve your staff, develop new relationships? Did you grow your client base? Are you in a better position this year than last year to make money? Are you staying consistent with your master plan? You know, I call it the mysterious master plan. And I'm going to ask you a question. Would you agree with this statement? A business is more likely to reach its goals if it knows what the goals are, right? All major decisions, sales initiatives, staff, operational issues, key strategic partnerships, all should revolve around what the master plan is. Here's an example. Small business, let's say a $5 million business, has a 3-year master plan, and in sales, they want their revenue to grow by 30%. That's 10% a year. After 1 year, they only see 5% growth. So now, because they have the end in mind, they can go back and say, okay, we're behind. What are we going to do? Either we're going to change our master plan, which, you know, sometimes you have to, or we've got to grow the business differently because what we're doing now isn't going to get us there. So you make that decision. If you plan on growing it, then you got to say, okay, what can I do to make up the 25% in the next 2 years? So either you're going to increase your lines of business in the same market, and by the way, it's a whole nother subject, which is a great one, or you might actually grow geographically. So without the master plan, you might, or your partners, you might never ask yourself that question. But because you had a master plan, you will. Picture this, you're on a ship, right? And the captain comes over the intercom and says, hey, everybody, our attention, please. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we're making great time. The bad news is we're hopelessly lost. Now, this describes a lot of companies today, unfortunately. You know, do you own a business like that? Do you work for one? Have you established a master plan? Has your company established a master plan? So owners, managers, staff members, embrace the idea of a guiding principle, a guiding plan that will dictate your moves between now and then. The next clip is an interview I did with Brian Gibbons. He's the CEO and chairman of Greenberg Gibbons Commercial. They're a real estate development company based in Maryland. And I've known Brian for over 25 years. He's a former neighbor. We used to play basketball together, a good guy all the way around. At the time, he was an attorney, but he walks us through his journey into commercial real estate development, especially as a company that focuses on brick and mortar stores in an age where, you know, the online sales seem to be the way to go. Brian also talks about his business model, GG 2.0, how his business is evolving forward, and even how COVID-19 may have actually helped him get to the next level. Have a listen.
We have office, including our own office, in addition to the retail, lots of restaurants. And so it really just creates the vibe. And it's, I'm here because I can walk down, I go to Whole Foods, I go to True Food Kitchen, I can go to Gordon Biersch, on any given day. And if I need to bring something home, I can go to Whole Foods and pick it up, and it just creates the environment that I think people love to live in this environment and work in this type of environment.
So obviously it works, and it's almost like a destination resort for some anyway. And if you live here, you can get everything you want without getting in your car, right? And so before we get to the acquisition part, COVID, you mentioned COVID, the pandemic. From my perspective, it would have depressed the value of several properties that you might buy, but you said it recovered faster. How has COVID impacted your business?
Well, in March of 2020, obviously, it was shut down. So we were shut down for several, 6 weeks that we were basically, the shopping centers were closed, other than necessity, like grocery stores. And obviously liquor stores were a necessity too, because those stayed open too. So we had to continue to run our projects, but a lot of our tenants were not open. So we went from 100% collections in March from our tenants to 50% collections across our portfolio in April. But that slowly climbed back up, so we were back at a 90% collection at the end of 2020. So it certainly had an immediate negative impact, and certain industries were more impacted than others. Certainly grocery stores were impacted positively. Restaurants, fitness, movie theaters. So what we've always tried to do is make our projects social and entertainment, not just shopping. And so those aspects were hurt in the short run. They've all relatively, I think the last one to recover is the movie theaters.
Yeah.
Our restaurants have certainly recovered. Our fitness has recovered. The movie theater is recovering, I would say. But the other thing that happened during the pandemic is that I think the ones that are going to be impacted the most were indoors, indoor malls. And ours are almost all outdoor open-air shopping centers, so they weren't impacted the same way the indoor malls were. We do have one small indoor mall called the Shops at Kelmore in Towson that did get more impacted, but that's now recovered. The other thing that happened is that pre-pandemic, there were a lot of tenants that were teetering. There was a lot of uncertainty. And I think the primary tenants that were teetering was what we would call soft goods, clothes, really the least internet resistant uses. And what happened during the pandemic, they all went away. They went through bankruptcy and got healthier through bankruptcy. And so what has come out now is that I think retail today is significantly healthier than it was before the pandemic. Because I think the weak tenants went away, new tenants have come in to replace them that are not necessarily these vulnerable to the internet.
That is a really interesting view. So as a business owner and partners in all these developments, you hit the brakes a bit, things slow down. What about your ability that you talk about acquisition, right? You're an real estate acquisition firm. How did that go? Did that speed up because?
Well, that's what we did. We raised about the guy we raised I think 125 million in private equity to do acquisitions, and we have bought 5 shopping centers from Providence, Rhode Island to Orlando, Florida, and everywhere in between. And so we have, the reason why we did that, we just thought there would be so much opportunity. But what has happened is that all the other categories of real estate, the yields are not good. Industrial, multifamily, those two in particular have been so high that all the capital chased it, which drove yields down. Now the capital has come back to retail. And we thought it would happen, but we thought it would take 3 or 4 years.
Right.
It took less than a year for that to happen.
So you looked at the pandemic, and again, it's just how do you see it? You saw the initial issues you talked about, but you also saw opportunity, and you seized on it.
Yes.
Changed your business a bit?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing that we did was we kind of hunkered down for 4 to 6 months, But while we hunkered down, we said, okay, what are we going to do coming out of this? And that's why we said we're going to do the private equity fund. So we closed that in February of 21. We added a multifamily division that we did in the fall of 20. What is today? 22. The fall of 21. And so we actually have positioned ourselves. And we also founded the Flex division, Flex Industrial division, in January of 21. So we actually came out and reinvented this 3.0 Greenberg Givens with all these diverse type of avenues that we can pursue.
So I think that's brilliant. And what I think the message here is, I don't care what business you're in or whatever, don't be afraid to evolve, right? And if you're looking ahead, and again, depending on your attitude, if you see things as opportunity based, that you're gonna find things that others are just not going to see. You've done that, and that's fantastic. Talk about development now. That's the third piece of the description for you. For those of you that listened to the Brian Gibbons full interview, you'll remember that I said he was a devoted husband and a father of 6, and an engaged one at that. The thing that really strikes me about Brian is that through all of his success, he's remained one of the most grounded and humble people that I know. Brian, my hat's off to you. So I talk about in the next clip, a solo effort, growing commercial revenue. And, I talk about the things that I'm aware of and how to do that. But the message of the podcast is relevant to any contracting business. So take a listen to the clip. I'm going to share with you how to grow your business profitably, offering new lines of business, specialty products found on every single commercial job. I'm going to share with you how you can successfully engage in this part of the industry immediately without the steep learning curve that's often associated with expanding one's business. That should be music to your ears. 4 important questions. Are you involved in commercial or residential construction? And if you are, do you understand the nuances of being a contractor? Do you have field, estimating, and administrative staff? Do you have an internal supply chain, which is a fancy way of saying, do you buy products from manufacturers, suppliers? Do they deliver them to your shop or directly to the job site and you install them? If the answer is yes, and this describes you, this episode could be a game changer for you. But like anything else in a new endeavor, no matter what it is, the big question is why? Why would you bother? Owners, do you want to grow your business? Maybe you want to modify it, right? Shed some less profitable lines of business for more profitable and less risky lines of business. If so, I'm going to give you some ideas on how to do that. Do you believe in the point of diminishing returns? Maybe you're really good at something, but you've reached a point where you've maxed out on the opportunities in your market and you've got to make some decisions. If, again, the question is why? If you want to grow. These are all key scopes of work that enhance the whole. Okay, and that's the best way to grow if you can add things that add value to your customers, that make you more valuable in the whole process. Managers, it's important to you. Can you improve your company by engaging in specialty lines of business? Right? And how can you provide ownership with a realistic path to grow profitably? In other words, you're going to go and say, hey boss, I got a good idea. Well, do you? Is it well thought out? Okay, can you describe that? Hopefully by the end of this episode, you're going to have that path and you'll be able to verbalize it if you believe in it. So maybe you're still thinking. Let me ask you a few more questions. What makes you good at what you already do? Whether you're a steam fitter, whether you're a roofer, a waterproofer, an insulation contractor, what makes you good? You have an experienced staff. You probably know what work to pursue for sure. You know the clients, you know the manufacturers of the products and the assemblies. You know how to estimate, price, and propose the job. You know how to procure the work, and you know how to produce it. Now, it sounds simple, right? But you know the business. You know your business. So what stops you? What stops owners and managers from pursuing new lines of business? Well, you're already busy. And if you're not busy, you're probably overstaffed. You're busy with what you're already doing, no question about it. You want to avoid the steep learning curve because not only does it suck the energy out of you, it can suck your cash too if you make a couple of mistakes. You lack, of course, specific trade experience and technical knowledge and field experience. So yeah, there are good reasons why you wouldn't want to risk doing something new. Now, every company that started typically started with one or two different lines of business, and the owners or the people driving the business knew them, and you grow. But if you've been an entrepreneur for a while, we've probably all made the same mistakes. We don't know what we don't know. And we try new things and we know we're confident, right? We can figure it out. But sometimes figuring it out takes a couple of 2 or 3 bad jobs. We want to avoid that. So what if I could show you a way to bridge the gap so you could offer new scopes and eliminate that learning curve? What if I could help you find the opportunities on each job, identify the clients that need what you do? We can help you estimate, price, propose, and procure the projects, and we can help you produce the work. Are you interested? Well, when we return, I'm going to let you know what lines of business we're talking about and how it could change your future. See you in a minute. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Presida, president of Adequate Construction Services, LLC, and I would love to talk to you business owners about your business. I bet you most of you that are listening have at least 75% of your personal equity tied up in the business. If you care about options on how to get that money out, that's what I want to talk to you about because I've been through it. I was a business owner and I sold my business. Didn't even know there was a buyer, but there are plenty of them. There has never been a better time than now to sell your business. So maybe you haven't even thought about it. The last deal I did, the guy, I talked to him, I said, "Do you ever consider selling your business?" He goes, "Didn't know I could." Well, yes, you can. There's a lot of options. I would urge you to go to my website, adicorp.com, ADICORP.com. My last name spelled backwards. And go to Season 1 Podcast, Episode 2, Sales and Acquisitions. It's going to answer a lot of questions you might have. Yes, we talk about how you value your company, but that's only one piece, right? We're talking about why you would sell, who would buy it, common concerns about you, your staff, your clients, your legacy, all important things to discuss. So go and listen to that podcast and then contact me. Either call me or leave a message on my contact page on the website and I will get back to you because, as I said when I started, I look forward to talking to you about your business. Between now and then, stay safe and stay tuned. So our next interview clip is with a 4th generation company over 115 years old and thriving, the Cameron Group, with CEO Ginny Cameron and president and son Scott Cameron. They offer a great mother-son perspective on what makes a multi-generational business successful. You know, their relationship is truly special, built on mutual respect. And this is one of the most fun interviews I did because you could see the connection that they had, right? In this clip, I offer them talking about their early days. And their early days are important because they were forced to do the grunt work. And to this day, they say that's a big piece of why they respect all their employees and why they have such a tightly knit group. This was an enlightening interview. Have a listen.
I guess you thought it was really cool that your dad had his own business and that they had a Coke machine in the lobby and you could get them for free.
See, then that's incredible. But that's what you think back and that's what you remember about it. And before we get to generation number 4, which you're going to, you grew up and your mother was in the business. What do you remember as a kid about the business?
My fondest memories are probably going to the ICA convention, which is the Insulation Contractors Association convention. And as a kid, I'm going into this big room and there's hundreds of people and there's my grandfather, my mom just working the room. It seemed like they knew every single person in that room. And I was amazed as a kid. And I wanted to be a part of it as soon as I could do it.
Wow. Very, very cool. So now you go from a little girl to a young woman. Was this your job? Did you start in the business working?
I did not. I started out working in this business in the summers. And I can't say I was really, really thrilled with it. It was construction. It was a little rough. We were working in a trailer. It had a porta-john in the back. And
Wasn't glamorous.
it was not at all. And I was doing a lot of work with members and builders, and they weren't the nicest people to deal with at that point. So I went to college, graduated, and went into the advertising industry. Spent 2 years in the advertising industry. That's a really, really fast burnout industry. And my dad said, well, I'll offer you a job, but you got to start at the bottom. And I said, okay, so what would I have to do? And he said, well, you have to count inventory. That's the first stop. And I said, okay, I could probably count inventory. So that's how I started in writing work tickets. So the guys went out to do their jobs. I would write out the work ticket. And that's how I became familiar with all the materials.
So you bring up a good point about your father saying you got to start at the bottom. He obviously, and maybe it's the generation, because we're going to get to you in a second. Maybe it's a generation, but I know my dad would have said, and I went to work for my dad for a couple summers, and I did all the grunt work, and he was so afraid that he would be handing me something that I didn't earn, right? And he knew it would be a disservice to me. I do the same to my son, by the way, and I know he's listening. But that's how you got started. When did you grow, and how did you grow in the business? Was it quick? Was it slow?
No, it was slow. I mean, I had to beg to get into sales. I said, I think it's time, Dad, that I got into sales. I think I can help you in sales. So he gave me a shot at that. And then he kind of showed me along the way, this is how you do this, and this is the industry, and here are the people you need to talk to. And he was tough. He was very well respected in the business by the manufacturers. And as he went along, he would teach me how to deal with people, which was critical. And he also knew all the numbers. He was a numbers guy. And he said, you gotta know the numbers. So he'd go out and he'd find out this person's paying this for this person's selling it for this. And because he was in really the resale of materials at that point.
Correct.
And the contracting side was kind of a sideline. And then that started to grow. And the more we dealt with larger builders, the bigger we got. And it just kind of mushroomed from there.
So I'm going to leave you for a second. You were a kid. What was your first job with the company?
As soon as I could pull a work permit at 14, I got a job there in the summers. I went into the air conditioning, filled out my application, and that was the last time I saw the AC. I was in the field. I worked in a warehouse my first summer. Got to learn all the inventory, the different R values, got to learn about insulation. My second year, I was in the field installing it. And that's a miserable job if you've ever done it. But it gives you a lot of respect for the guys that do it. And that's a lesson that needed to be taught, because you have a lot of respect for your employees once you do what they do and go through their pain. So, taking a cold shower after you get home to get that insulation off
and let's
was the best feeling in the world.
Let's not forget your nickname. He's Uncle Beep Beep to his brother's son, and it's because I said you better learn how to drive a forklift.
Uncle Beep Beep, okay.
And he would get on that forklift, and he's still the best out there.
That's
on a
awesome.
forklift.
Well, you know what I'm hearing, and for those that are watching and listening, is that neither of you were handed anything. You were given an opportunity. All right? And one of the reasons I got to say that, and agree or disagree, that your company is now in its fourth generation, you're successful, is because the people who are running the show, you guys, right, have been through it all. Right? You started low, you finished high, but all along the way, you said it, Scott, you respect the hell out of the people doing the work every day because you did it. That's awesome. Is there anything like you want to add to your father or your mother that would lend itself to that end, right? That you appreciate the opportunity? Because I've seen lots of second generation people not ready, not willing, or willing but not able to do it? What makes you different?
You got to love what you do. You know, a lot of people maybe get forced into a family company. It's not their passion. It's not what they want to do. I grew up and I loved it. I just wanted to do it. So for me, it was just natural. You know, I could just pick it up. I love construction. I loved everything about it, and I still love it. You know, if it's not your passion, you know, even though it's a family company and a legacy, don't do it.
So passion is critical.
Absolutely.
It is. And the love for the industry. You have to love this industry. You have to want to get back to it. You want to make it better. It's a great industry. I always said, how neat is it? You work in an industry where you put insulation in somebody's house, doesn't ever degrade, doesn't ever stop working, doesn't have any working parts, but it makes it more comfortable, makes it happier. How can you go wrong with that?
That's a good way
It's
to look at it.
It's a good, honest business.
So now you've been... In our next clip, it's from Building Relationships to Improve Sales. And in it, I discuss the consequences of relationship building. You know, either you do or you don't. During this episode, I even ask a question: what's more important, the relationship or the number you propose for the job? Which one? Which is more important? We answer that question. Also ask some key questions about you and your personal style, you know, about relatability. This is a must listen for anybody who wants to influence others in a positive way, especially in sales. Any salespeople out there? Here we go. So every time a job comes out, an opportunity, you get an ITB, which is an invitation to bid. Now, let's talk about what a bid means, because a bid is an offer by definition. And I think too many of us get hung up in bidding work. And bidding work, you're putting together proposals and you're putting together numbers, but you're just another bid. We're going to focus on what I would call pursuits. Now, the difference between a bid and a pursuit is huge. A pursuit is a verb. It's like chasing, right? Tracking, catching, capturing. It's an ongoing process. So a pursuit starts with understanding that there's an opportunity and ends with hopefully closing a job. So a relationship is defined as a connection with another person. Now, you can have a relationship with anybody, but it could be a weak relationship. That's a weak connection. It could be an average one. We want to talk about building a strong relationship that helps you and your client. Now, don't get relationships involved with friendships because they're different. You can and will have strong relationships without being friends. It happens every day, right? People can count on you because they have a relationship with you, regardless of whether you're considered a friend or not. Now, we'll get to this a little bit more later, but if you can make your clients your friends, two things will happen. You'll reap the benefits in terms of more business. And the second thing, which is really important, is you're going to enjoy your business more because you're working with people that you really like. We're going to discuss that in particular when we get to RDP. You're going to want to stick around and listen to that part. Because it's a negotiated setting, you want to be the one they want to work with, right? And that's where all this is going. All this is going to say, if all else is equal, your client wants you because you have a strong relationship. Your clients have choices. What differentiates you from somebody else? That's what we're going to find out. Now, I preface all of this entire episode, that I know that we're in the middle of a pandemic. COVID-19 has impacted the way people do business. And in our interview with Brian Termel, we talked about it. It's not great, but it's transformative. Okay, I think if nothing else, this is going to make us better at what we do. But the personal contact, the personal relationship, I call bellying up with somebody, right, is the key for the past 50 years and certainly for the next 50 years. I don't care what technology does. It's your ability to make friends or make relationships with the people you do business with. A buddy of mine, he's a good guy. He's been in the business for probably as long as I have. And he sells building products. And fortunately, he's with a good company. But this is what he tells me. He goes, he says, I don't really believe in relationships. I get sales. I can't bother spending time with people until I know they have something that I can sell them. And he said, and that's when he says, turn up the heat. And I said, sounds corny, but okay. So you're going to wait until a guy gets a job and then you're going to knock on his door. Okay, that's the way you do business. He's probably selling price and not value, because later in the conversation he says, there's hardly any money in this business. So he's probably not selling value, he's selling price. He gets to work if he's low, and the guy's best friend who's also selling products won't touch those numbers. That's very possible. So there's no shortcuts in developing a relationship. And what is the one word, I'll give you a second to think, what's the one word you think you have to get to really build a strong, a fruitful relationship? It starts with a T, and it's the word trust. Trust is the biggest thing in any relationship, whether it's business or personal. And, there's only one way to build trust. I said this before, when you're talking about marketing, your biggest marketing tool or your biggest branding tool is your ability, your company's ability to do what they say they're going to do. That's the only way you can build trust. Now, there's always that first job, because you can't build trust if you don't do a job with somebody, right? And they see how good you are. So we're talking about building trust, in a long period of time, one job at a time, but we got to get you to that first job. Now, there's another thing that's important, because your client might trust you. He also might trust somebody else. Trust is the foundation of the relationship, but value is what you build on top of that trust. Value in terms of what you offer. Remember, your clients care how much you care before they care how much you know. So what do they need? One of the biggest things in building a relationship is understanding the needs of your client and being there every step of the way. We talk about budgeting. Somebody said, well, I'm not going to budget because I'm too busy. But is that really what your client needs? No, they need you now. They need you in the beginning, and they need you throughout the process. We could do an entire episode on just how to vet opportunities and how to vet clients. We're assuming that this client is a good fit for you. We have to assume that. But from there, you're either going to bid work with a guy you may not know, or you're going to spend time on a budget. But when I say adding value, I'm talking about A to Z, right? Think about the things that you buy. If you buy products or you buy services, subcontractors, how do you look at it? You're looking at somebody that's there the whole time, not the guy or the girl that knocks on the door when you get the job. It's the person that was there, right, on the come, so to speak, that was with you when you were not so sure you were going to get the job, but that's how you add value. So if you can add value to trust, then I think you're really onto something. So our next clip is an interview I did with a longtime friend, Dominic Baruffi, the president of Jersey Panel, a friend for over 30 years. I got to tell you, Dominic is easily one of the most passionate business leaders I know. He does more than just run a business. He wants to shape the industry. Now, he's helped to do that with the help of Stowe Corporation, and he talks about how that started, where Stowe Panel technology is today, and how it's changed him in Jersey Panel. So take a listen.
The way what happened to me with Stowe, I love to say whenever I speak in front of groups, I like to tell people that I wish I could tell you that I was so smart and I was so forward thinking that I dogged Stowe down. I went after them, and I Googled them and I chased after them. I'd love to say that, but I'd be lying. The truth is, I did from 1991 to 2009. I was on a quest to take this idea to whatever heights it could go. I was completely unsuccessful. And I literally traveled the globe, and I mean the globe, to try to take this idea to do what we now call Stowe Panel technology. I was not successful. And I kind of gave up on the idea. After a few opportunities and getting close in situations to do it, I never was able to connect with what I was told by a consultant at one time to look for what he was called a strategic investor. And so I had given up because I wasn't able to connect. The idea just wasn't getting any traction. I would talk to people and they wanted to invest and give me capital. And I said, I didn't need capital. I wanted a strategic partner where I could partner with and take this forward. And it was in 2009 is the story where I was, I like to say I was sitting in my office. And that day in 2009, my life changed when this company, Stowe, I got a phone call that our distributor for the company wanted to stop in and say hello.
And Stowe
is a material supply company. They are an international company that's based out of Weizen, Germany. And they're an industry leader with absolutely the best reputation, the best products. And I came to find out the best people in the industry. I was not using them, not for any reason at the time when this occurred. The call that came in was to stop in and say hello to us, and I thought that was kind of a cool thing. The CEO's in town, he wants to say hello. I really thought it was going to be a 5-10 minute hello, how are you? Really nice meeting you. I wish you well, you wish me well, and let's go about our separate ways. And so that day I was in my office, I was approached by a man, his name is David Boyven, and he was at the time the CEO of the company. And he approached me, he came in, it was a really cool moment. I got to meet him, and if you know David, has this big smile and came in, how you doing? And he said to me, hey, listen, I wanted to meet you. I heard you all are doing something. We don't get it, we don't understand it, but somehow you and your company is doing it. You're successful at it, you keep doing it. Some people get into business, some people go out. We have no idea. How does this work? What's going on? Please tell me, because I'm intrigued, but we don't know what you do. And so it was a day I like to refer to it. It was one of the highlights of my life that day, and will always be for 2 reasons. Number one is that day was the beginning of what changed my business life. And it gave me a personal opportunity, it gave my family a business. It's radically impacted who Jersey Panel is today and what we're doing, and the platform that we get to stand on and what we get to affect. Today, it's 11 years later. From that date, we did not sign our agreement till July 1st of 2011. But 9 years after that date, now 2020, we now have as of today, 36 affiliates in 8 countries. By the end of this year, we could have, by the end of this year, 40 affiliates in 10 countries. That's a totally different impact.
For those that don't know about the Stowe program, how would you summarize what it means and why you did it?
Well, I guess I would just end up finishing my last statement as I answer that, why I did it. Because the second thing that happened that day was I gained one of the best friends you could ever have.
He's a good man.
It's just an incredible, committed individual to his business, to the Stowe company, to progress. His understanding, his intellect is at a level that I just can't get to. I always tell him I'm eye candy in our relationship. He has me for the looks, and he's the brains in what we do. But love him to death. So just in general, the program, I like to refer to.
You're the executive director.
Personally, I am the executive director of the program. When we started in 2011, we had 1 affiliate, Jersey Panel. Mm-hmm. I do have a second hat. I am the CEO of Jersey Panel. But the way we did that was we took the products of Jersey Panel and we rebranded them. So Stowe took my intellectual property of many years of doing this, and we rebranded everything, retested it, put it through the Stowe filter, if you will, and came out with our program of products. And then the program began. What is the program? What is the program right now? Is the program, I like to describe it as, it is a comprehensive program. What does that mean, comprehensive? One of the things I like to say tongue-in-cheek is we're not about a panel. And that's kind of a funny thing to say when you're talking to somebody. Say, wait, no, Jersey Panel, Stowe Panel technology. You're saying it's not about a panel. Well, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek because we obviously we have panels, but the idea is we're so much more than that. We've become a program that's comprehensive. Because, again, the way I describe it is we're about a methodology to construct a building, and so we're not about a material. We're not even about a panel. We're about a network of companies, for the first time in history, by the way, that have come together under one umbrella, under the Stowe name, and we pull all the assets and the resources of Stowe, of the affiliates, and we come together now to blend that together to do things that you cannot do alone. You know, we have a saying in our church, better together, and the idea is what you can do together is radically different than what you can do independently.
Thank you, Dominic, for sharing. Dominic is part of a family business, and we've interviewed several family businesses, and for the most part, most family businesses do not succeed because the second or third or fourth generation just isn't ready. Dominic and his brothers took Jersey Panel to a new level, and I congratulate him for it. The next clip is some of my thoughts about what makes up steps in a successful commercial pursuit. You know, I said before I sold a lot of work in my career, and I'm going to share some of them with you. I discussed the differences, and this is important, between a bid and a pursuit, and point out that a successful pursuit doesn't always end in an award. Okay, all the steps in between are important. This is a must listen for anybody in sales. Have a listen. I'm excited today to talk about sales. And I'm going to outline what I believe to be critical steps in a successful commercial sales pursuit. Now, I want to preface this with successful can mean a lot of different things. If you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, we're going to win the job, right? That's success. Well, it is for sure. But sometimes you lose a job and it still can be a successful pursuit because you've done everything else right and you set yourself up for the next job. We're going to talk about that. You're not, nor do you want to get every job that you pursue, because if you are, you're probably pricing it wrong and doing some other things. But you want the jobs that you want. So a successful pursuit will either get you the job or it'll set you up for the next one. Now, I got to make some assumptions, and these are broad, but they're important. You need to know your brand, which means you need to know who you are, what you are to the clients, what you are to the industry. You have to stay true to that. You have to understand how you want to go to market and be consistent. Have you outlined with your management team your risk tolerance? What are you willing to risk on a job? Maybe it's excess number of men, or I don't want more than 100 guys on a job, or maybe 10 guys, whatever. How much, material am I willing to be out? All of those things are important. Do you know what your revenue goals are? Have you shared them with your managers? Is everybody on the same page? Do you know what your net operating profit goals are? You should, because all of these things matter when you choose to pursue a job. When you pursue a job, you're making an investment of time, resources, and money. So the better bet you make, the better the company is. Big one has ownership and senior management bought in to all of the things I just mentioned. We're going to assume that they did. And again, it's broad, but it's important. Now, the first step, you're going to get invitations to bid all the time, whether you're in a mechanical business, a painter, flooring, windows, curtain wall, drywall, acoustical ceilings, whatever it is, insulation, spray fire, doesn't matter. The industry gets invitations to bid from the customers, especially if you've been around a while. You're going to get them. As soon as they know, as soon as the client puts you in a database, you're getting ITBs, whether you want to or not. But you got to screen them. So step one, screen the invitations to bid. And these are some of the things you're going to be looking at. Is it in line with your master plan? Again, you got that master plan. Or does it, hey, it looks good, I'm going to do it. If it's in line with your master plan, in particular your sales budget, that's great. What type of procurement method is it? If it's low bid, like a public bid, you may not even want to get involved because then there's no sales involved. If it's negotiated or best value, now we're talking. Because now, if you can demonstrate that you're different, you put yourself in a good position. Perhaps the most important thing, do you have a relationship with the client who's asking you for the bid? Now again, this might be a multi-GC bid or a budget. And we talked about those in other podcasts. They're great ways, and some people shy away from them. They're great ways to get in early and develop relationships by being professional and adding value throughout, not with one company, but with several. So there's advantages to that. Does the scope of work offer advantages to your company? I work with a company now who's great at plastering. They're great at plastering. They do a lot of other stuff. But plastering is something they do better than anybody. And every time that they see plaster in a bid, they're on it. And they should be, because it's a huge differentiator. So does the ITB match what you do? Are you good at rain screen? Okay, are you good at terrazzo? Whatever it is, if it really matches your strength, then that's another good consideration. Does the client run a good job? Do they pay their bills? Does it fit our schedule? This is a big one. If you're bidding 2 jobs that fall in the 4th quarter of the upcoming year and you get one of them, now you know you got one, and now you got 2 more ITBs that come in for the same time, you may choose not to bid them, or if you do bid them, you may choose to bid them differently. If it's a good customer, you're going to want to cover them anyway, but you might not want that job. So again, it's a consideration. Do your resources line up? Do you have estimators available? If the answer to the above questions are yes, then it's on to the next section. And I call this developing a plan to win, not a plan to bid. A plan to bid is simple. I get the ITB, I sign an estimator, he goes through the estimate, and then we take it, put it on the proposal, send it off. Simple, right? You could be a robot and do that. I'm talking about developing a plan to win. The first step to that is to understand the job. How do you develop a strategy without understanding what the job needs? Maybe it's a schedule impact job. Maybe it's heavy on interior demising walls. Maybe you can prefab some of it. Maybe you can prefab the entire soffit area. Maybe if you're a mechanical contractor, you can do a ton of prefab too, but look at the details. Otherwise, you're just looking at a building and you're allowing your estimators to lead you in a direction you may not want to go. Spend a couple hours looking at the fine line. I'd say collaborate with a field staff member. Look at means and methods, because you're trying to determine a strategy that separates you, right, that adds value to the customer. And here's a big one, especially if you're on the business development side, which I tend to like. Once you understand the job, before you do anything else, before you assign an estimator, right, have a discussion with a high-level manager, someone on that procurement team who has, something to say, so that you can understand their position and their strategy. Especially, obviously, if they don't have the job yet. They need you to help them get the job. If they have the job, this type of discussion will allow you to understand better where they are and what they need, for them to have a good job. I think you really got to understand, especially in the bidding process, what type of procurement it is for your client. Is it a design, build, design, assist, IPD? There's a number of them, but the more you understand about the needs of your client, the better you're going to be able to add value. Now, I think if it's a design assist job, you want to get in early. We're seeing more and more of that. But the earlier you get in, and again, you're only going to get in early if you have something to add to the design. Maybe it changes the schedule or whatever, right? But that's an awesome thing to do. Regardless of the procurement, you're always, during the strategy stage, for sure, looking for things that you can sell, whether it be prefab assemblies, things that save time, value engineering, right? Whatever it is, look for things to sell, because now you're becoming more valuable to the client. The more you know about the job and what they need, the better you're going to be. Again, don't forget to ask for the job. I'll say that again. Don't forget to ask for the job. Now, once you've done a follow-up, and remember, we've done 9 things already, ask yourself the question, can you count on your estimators to do all these things? I think I know the answer. Number 10, upon award, and I didn't say award to you, I said upon award, regardless of the outcome, get a debrief, right? You want to learn. You put a lot of time into the job. If you get the job, awesome. Thank them, right? Whatever you do to show your gratitude, make sure they know they're a part of your success. Thank them for it, and make sure you do what you say you're going to do, because then you'll be in line to get the next one. If you don't get the job, you still want to get a debrief. And a good way to say that is, look, Joe, Sally, hey, I didn't get the job. I appreciate the opportunity. I really do. I'm disappointed I didn't get it, but I'd love to know why. Do you have a half hour to sit down and talk to me so I can better be prepared for the next one? Now, isn't that a positive way to get through a bad job and to set yourself up for the next one? Remember, I said a successful pursuit does not always end up with an award. But a successful pursuit is always consistent with your brand. It never makes your client feel guilty. And if you think they used you, maybe give one more try. And if it happens again, just stop, right? Deal with people you want to deal with, but you'll never know. If they choose not to give you a debrief, do they really care that you spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours with your estimating group on the job? If they don't care, maybe you should reconsider. Remember, in step one, right? One of the steps of the process when you're defining what a good opportunity is the client good? Do you have a relationship with the client? If they won't even give you a debrief after you lost a job, you need to reconsider that relationship. Okay, but whatever you do, continue building toward the next one. So I've just outlined 10 steps that I consider critical in a successful commercial pursuit. Our next episode is called Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone. And I said earlier that, I am not the guru with all the answers. I struggle with things too. This is one of them, but I got to say that, in this episode, we talk about what is the comfort zone and why is it tough to get out of. And no matter what you're doing, whether it's business or personal pleasure, sports, whatever, there's a good message here that you'll want to hear. So have a listen to Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone. Today is going to be a solo effort by me, and we're going to talk about getting out of one's comfort zone. I quote, "Getting out of your comfort zone is the first step to improving one's personal life and business future," end quote. Said a person I have a lot of respect for, and I happen to agree with them. Do you? The definition of a comfort zone is a place where you feel comfortable, of course, and your abilities are not being tested, or it's a place you don't do anything new or different. I'm going to repeat that last piece. It's a place where you don't do anything new or different. A place where you feel comfortable, right? We've all gone through it. It's easier to stay home than it is to go out and work out or meet somebody new or do something different. We know that, but is it the best thing for you? That's the question. Okay, let's break it down. Being comfortable is nice. Yeah, it is sometimes, but it's not a catalyst for change. And without change, there is no growth, right? I always like to say getting out of your comfort zone equals change, and change it always precedes growth. So if you're looking for personal growth or growth in your relationship with somebody or your children or even in business, right? You got to do things a little differently tomorrow than you did today. Become a little better at what you're doing. Get out of your comfort zone, okay? Understanding what a comfort zone is, whether you're a seasoned manager, whether you're new in business or even an owner, knowing what that comfort zone is can be the first step in overcoming the fear of getting out of it. Now, the comfort zone is really, we can talk about that all day long, but really it's the fear that drives somebody to stay in it that has to be overcome, right? You can say getting out of your comfort zone. Well, first of all, you got to know why you want to do it. Why are you willing to do things that you're not good at, that you're not comfortable with, in order to overcome the fear of it? Why? I say this, no matter what big decisions you're making, the why has to be stronger than the discomfort it's going to take to get through the things you got to get through. We say that in starting a new business and in every facet of business. You look at any successful person, and I don't mean success as somebody making a lot of money. Maybe that's one form of success, and that defines success to somebody. But when I interview folks for this podcast, I always ask them, how would you define success? And you hear everything from, I'm a better parent, I'm a better friend, I make more money, I got more time, whatever it is that turns you on, the why. You have to know why you want to do it. Now, if we get back to, why bother, right? You might say that. And if you're going to say that this podcast is not for you, But if you think that you might want to hear more, then stick around. If you're in sales, maybe you're comfortable with your clients. Comfortable, there's that word again. But do you want to become more vocal and influence operations? Perhaps you do. Perhaps that's your why. If you're an engineer, man, you're smart. Everybody knows you're smart, but you're quiet. Is that going to hold you back if you're just listening? Or do you want to have input into decisions and help shape the company you're in? If you're a manager, you have a specific skill set that got you to where you are today. Is that enough? Is that where you want to stay? If it is, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it at all. But if you want to get better, how are you going to do it? Do you want to influence others in a bigger way? How are you going to overcome the things necessary to get there? If you're an owner, you're a great strategist. You put a lot of people in a good spot that work for you. You're good at finding talent to execute what you think needs to be done. But maybe you want to be a better speaker so you can inspire others in a group setting. Maybe that's something that you're not comfortable with. What is your why? Have you thought about it? Do you care enough to identify what that is? I've been around a long time. I say that with a smile. But what still excites me to this day is learning new things, getting better at the things that I undertake. I'm like addicted to the learning curve. And my wife will be the first one to tell you, I latch onto something and I just get good at it. In my case, it was business at first, then it was sports. It could be anything. But as long as I'm continuing to change and growing, I'm not shrinking. I'll continue to find new ways to stay excited about what I'm doing, and that will continue to help me grow. Now, let's say you've identified the why because you're still listening. If you're not listening, it doesn't matter, right? You've identified why you want to change. Now, how are you going to do it? So we already talked a little about understanding that it's fear that needs to be overcome. And usually it's the fear of failure. And then what is fear of failure? It could be many things, but it's something that everyone at some point is afraid of. Everybody. Okay? It's not that people aren't afraid to do new things. It's not that people aren't afraid to overcome fear. It's some people want to. Taking on something that doesn't work out. Does that bother you? Maybe it doesn't work out. Caring too much about what other people think, that holds you back. Fearing what a setback will do to your own psyche. The way I look at it, and if you look at any successful person, we talked about this already, they've gone through many failures. And failures they see as setbacks, as building blocks. Building blocks necessary to help them get where they want to go, whatever success means to them, whatever form that takes. My mother told me that every time you fall, you get closer to your target if you get up and keep moving. My mom told me that. Now, it could be said by a professor, a coach, anybody. It's true. The way you see what some people would call failures, if you look at them as setbacks and ways to help you grow, you're going to be so far ahead that it's going to be difficult to hold you back. The next clip is an interview I did with Brian Trammell. Now, he's the Vice President of Public Relations and Strategic Initiatives for the AGC. Now, if you don't know who the AGC is, you need to listen to this because they're an unbelievable trade organization. He describes who they are. But what I remember most about Brian was that he was very charismatic. He was certainly into everything he was doing. I think it's the perfect position for him. And the way he described the industry today, and more so the future of the industry, was inspiring to me, and I hope it is to you. So take a listen. Let's talk about AGC, when it started, who it is. Just give us some background.
Sure. So the Associated General Contractors of America, we're a commercial construction trade association. We were started in November of 1918, so we're a little over 100 years old. We celebrated our centennial back in. Oh, thank you. I'm glad it's done. Yeah, it was a lot of work, but back in 2018, and the way it started actually, for those of you who are fans of history, during World War I, many different parts of the economy essentially got backed up as the country mobilized for the first war effort. And there were a lot of problems in the building of these, they call them cantonments, or large military bases used to train all the soldiers during war, the doughboys for World War I. And at the end of the war, there was kind of this appreciation of the business community that they needed to sort of pull together and unite so they could all advocate or sort of work on common interests. And actually, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce organized a construction-focused meeting in Atlantic City in 1918. And there were a bunch of general contractors in the room, and they looked around, and pretty quickly they realized, wait a second, this meeting's being run by a bunch of subcontractors. We're out of here. And so they left, and they went to Chicago, and they created, a few months later, what became the Associated General Contractors of America in, again, November of 1918. And as a trade association, so we, like I said, we represent the commercial construction community. So our members build everything except for single-family houses. So anything that requires a hard hat. Power plants, highways, bridges, airports, ports, office buildings, strip malls, hotels. Even, they're not building like the Meander and Muse housing developments, but they're building the roads and putting the pipelines in that serve those communities. And they're building the strip mall outside with the grocery store and the pizza place. So, as a trade association, I kind of say we have 3.5 things that we do on behalf, that our members pay us to do. The main 3 are we advocate, we educate, and we connect. And the other half one is we also save our members a heck of a lot of money, which we'll get to in a second. But so on the advocacy side, we're paid to advocate on behalf of the interest of the construction community in Washington, right? So that's everything from traditional, old school, brown shoe lobbying, walking up and down when you could, the halls of Congress, making sure that legislators are passing measures that are in the interest of the industry, and blocking the stupid stuff that's going to make it harder for folks to build things, to employ workers, or to be successful in their business. But we also do a lot of regulatory advocacy. The more political gridlock we've got in this town, the more decisions are actually getting made by bureaucrats and executive office or executive branch officials who are writing regulations.
True lobbyists.
Oh my gosh, so I mean, I guess, nature abhors a void or a vacuum, a void. And since Congress isn't passing laws, the executive branch just goes ahead and starts writing them in the form of regulations.
So we are going to get into the political aspect of it. But
okay.
If we back up a little bit,
yeah.
Your mission is you advocate for all commercial construction.
That's right.
How would you say?
Well, we are big believers in the fact that the foundation for America's economic success, for our quality of life, and for our national defense is commercial construction. You can't have anything else in this country before you build it. You can't have a greener future. You can't have strong military facilities. You can't have a thriving economy. You can't even have nice parks and recreation facilities if you don't build it first. So the construction industry is the backbone of everything we take for granted in this country. So our job is to advocate for measures that will help that industry succeed and to protect them from measures that will harm them in the work they do as the foundation for our economy.
Like poor legislation.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, plenty of poor legislation. And in fairness, I don't want to sound like a naive optimist, but our general belief is that most poor legislation isn't done out of spite. It isn't done because people don't want construction industry to succeed. It's just that most people don't understand how our industry works, right? I mean, it's a lot more complicated than just I saw a dozer, I saw a piece of yellow equipment outside my window, I think I know construction. So our job, 90% of the time, is really just to educate members of Congress and federal and executive branch officials on how the industry works and what can actually help them and what can actually hurt them. And that solves not all, but most of our problems.
So you're a trade organization. I love it that you're commercial construction because that's what we are. What makes you different than ABC and ASA and all the other acronyms out there? And they're all good, but what makes you different?
You're right. They're great organizations, and we have strong working relationships with all of them. We're the only trade association that represents the entire commercial construction industry. We represent general contractors, we're the largest subcontractor association in the nation. We represent open shop, we represent union shop. We represent, again, every type of commercial construction except for single family housing. There's no other association that represents the entire commercial construction industry. So if it's an issue that affects construction, we're on it. And frankly, as a communications guy, that makes my job a little bit more challenging because it's not, I just can't boil it down to here's 1, 2, and 3 things we stand for. If it's construction related, we're on it, which means that we actually have to be a mile wide and a mile deep on an enormous range of issues. Right? So we don't do a lot of, we will end up, and we can talk about this in a bit if you want, but we don't do a ton of craft training. Some of our chapters do craft training, but we don't do a ton of craft training. But when you start getting to those folks who wear boots but khakis, that's how I like to describe it. You know, there's some time in the trailer, sometimes on the job site, sometimes back in the office. We have a wide range of training programs to help them transition and advance their career.
So give me an example of what you would provide for a PM, because like we said, this podcast is for everyone from owner to intern. We want people to move forward in the business.
So it's everything from, I mean, we have sort of, advanced supervisory training programs, advanced project manager programs. We have a building information modeling certification program. So you can actually come out of our program, and if you pass the test, I've never taken it, but they tell me it's rigorous, then you can have a, BIM certificate. Speaking of the coronavirus accelerating trends, if you can model and map, buildings in 3D and kind of eliminate all your oops moments before you get to construction, you're invaluable, right? Same thing with lean construction. We've got a lean construction education curriculum. You come out with your certificate if you pass the test at the end of that. So the idea is to make these kind of mid-career professionals even more valuable to their firms, and at the same time to drive innovation within the industry, right? Through these education programs. But beyond the kind of formal, I'm going to sign up and take 30 hours, 40 hours of class programs, so much of what we do in terms of our annual convention and our subject-specific meetings are designed to educate the industry about the latest trends. And one of the things we spend a lot of time thinking about and frankly worried about is that, all right, so as all this cool new technology comes on board, we've got a lot of large members, but we've also got a lot of medium and small size members. Now, our large members are wonderful in that they can kind of field test a lot of the technology, and they can figure out of these 10 gee whiz pieces of technology, 7 are junk, 2 are cool, and 1 is really helpful. But our smaller and medium-sized members, they don't have the time, resources, or staff to do all that R&D or do that on-site testing. So we can come in and work with our larger members and say, all right, of these 10 new pieces, this is great. These 2 are okay, but here are the pitfalls you need to know when implementing it. And these other 7, put them over.
So you in essence learn from some of the big guys, and that filters down to some of the smaller companies that don't have those resources. And our final clip is from an episode I did called Building a Better You. And I got to tell you, you have to listen to the disclaimer, because just like you, I struggle with things. I do care enough about them to think about them and to offer them to you in terms of questions. Now, we do tie it to the construction industry because there's a spec office building and then there's a purpose-built office building. And I ask you the question, which one are you? It's a whole lot deeper than that, but here are a couple examples, so have a listen. I direct a lot of questions in this podcast to you, and I say that in air quotes. Please understand that I posed the same questions to myself all the time. I don't pretend to have all the answers or even all the questions. I struggle with everyday life like many of you do. The struggle exists because I care. I want to get better. I think for myself, and I've developed strong opinions over the years, that's for sure. But I remain open to the thoughts of others. I listen, and I listen to things that can create positive change in my life. And I hope that's why you tuned in today. We often get buried in the details of the day and forget the bigger picture. So my job today is kind of to bring that back to square one, if you will. And we're going to get very, very detailed about purpose and passion and things like that. Spec core and shell office buildings, this speculative office space, is basically move-in ready. It meets all the legal requirements like structural integrity, proper life safety systems, among other things, but it's waiting for others to determine how it looks and how it's used at the end of the day. A spec office building, quote, takes what it gets, end quote. The design is completed by the end user, typically serving its purpose for the term of the lease. When one tenant leaves, another one enters, and that creates minor renovation in the internal design to fit the needs of the new tenant. The spec office building serves a purpose, but is nothing special. So I ask you, are you like a spec office building? Do you take it as it comes? Sure, you meet all the requirements, you're personable, presentable, you have a good work ethic, adequate education and experience, you interview well enough to fit in anywhere, but do you comply with what happens around you? If so, you're like a spec office building, getting by, no big triumphs, no big failures, minimal features. You get through the day, and then there's tomorrow. Same old, same old. Remember, I'm not here to judge. We need spec office buildings. You just need to determine if that's what you want to be. On the opposite end of the building spectrum are buildings that are built with a purpose. Their features were designed to support the daily needs of its occupants and meet the expectation of the owners. Now, let me say that again. Meet the expectation of the owner. That would be you. All consistent with their brand, their purpose built. Each owner or developer begins with the end in mind, something Stephen Covey, a famous author, said. The owner knew what it's needed to support the staff. They know what they wanted it to look like to reflect their brand. And here's the right word. They shaped it the way they wanted it to become. Okay, shaped is a verb. They did what it took to become what they wanted it to be. I'm going to give you a few examples of purpose-built buildings. MGM Casino at National Harbor. Now, notice I called it the MGM Casino because that's its name. It's not like its Las Vegas counterpart, MGM Grand Hotel and Casino, because it didn't want to be that. It wanted to cater to people who commuted. So it was built with a purpose, and the effective parking design was huge. New Orleans VA had the money to spend, and they did, with veterans in mind post-Iraqi War when the VA was under fire and finally invigorating the local New Orleans economy. You know, both Apple and Amazon headquarters were designed to stand out, maximizing their brand and supporting the practical use inside. Glenn Towers, Towson University is the owner. They simply wanted to upgrade 4 dormitory buildings on campus, creating a better living environment for all its students. Now, I know this firsthand because I was involved in each one of these jobs. And I said, as I said before, it's one of the coolest things about being in the industry. So, the one thing they all had in common, they were built with a purpose. Are you built with a purpose? Another way to ask the same question, are you intentional with your thoughts and actions? Are they purposeful? Again, are you intentional with your thoughts and actions? Being intentional, to me anyway, takes a clear understanding of where you want to go, what you want to do, and what you want to become. Now, let's face it, many people go through their entire lives, day by day, just to get by, settling for whatever comes their way. If nothing else today, I urge you to define your purpose. Maybe that is as simple as becoming the best version of yourself. So, I hope you enjoyed building a better you. And before we sign off, I do have one little tidbit that I want you to listen to. So a few final thoughts, and I wrestled with even sharing this with you, but I think it's important to. I talked about my dad in my original promo, and I described him a few months ago the way I would describe him, or the way I did describe him 27 years ago when he retired at his retirement party. He was the most hardworking, humble, selfless guy that I've ever known. And everybody liked him for a couple reasons, for the reasons I just mentioned, but also he never made anybody feel lesser than him, and he always made them feel important. Now, that doesn't really have anything to do with this podcast, but my father always had a smile on his face, and I'll never forget that. It was his choice. He decided that he wanted to look on the bright side. It was contagious. Now, he was never a businessman. He was a blue-collar guy from the get-go. But he was a great man. And on Valentine's Day, he passed. But until he was 90 and a half, 90 and a half, he was driving and he was bowling 3 times a week, and he had a smile on his face every single day. Everybody loved Phil. Nothing was below him, and he wasn't above anybody. And what I remember about the last, year in his life, he had a stroke, and he was in a nursing home. And during COVID, I had to look at him. My family, we had to look at him through a window. He couldn't talk, but you know what he did? He smiled. A choice he made. Now, I know I'm getting emotional, but I don't want to get melodramatic. All I'm saying to you is look at things on the bright side. You're going to be happier, and you're going to attract more people. As it relates to business, you'll be better. But even forgetting that, it's just the way to go. It's a choice that my father made. We're going to miss you, Pop, but we're never going to forget you, and you're part of us forever. So those are my final thoughts. I hope you got a lot out of this podcast. Didn't want to end it on a sad note because he has a great life, and we'll celebrate it one day when the emotions leave. So there you have it. Episode 12, Season 3, the best of commercial construction, elevate the industry. I got to tell you, it's been a wild ride. It's been good for me, and I want to thank you for listening, for all your feedback. We want to share what we can with you, and I think that we have. It's been fun, and until we meet again, stay safe and stay tuned. So follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Elevate Industry. Check out my YouTube channel at Commercial Construction, Elevate the Industry. Visit my website, adicorp.com, adicorp.com. Go to LinkedIn, search for David Procida, hit connect, and follow me. Please rate, review, and comment on this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.